Mr. Murphy.
Line 58, library salaries. I move to increase line 58 of the FY 2003 operating budget, library salaries, by the sum of $75,228, and that said sum be raised and appropriated from the tax levy.
Mr. Sturdivant.
Mr. Moderator, the Finance Committee recommends the transfer.
Does the Board of Selectmen wish to make a recommendation? Mr. Murphy, does the Board of Selectmen wish to make a recommendation?
Yes, the Board of Selectmen unanimously recommends. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing Mrs. Norris, please state your name and address. Mrs. Norris is the chairman of the Board of Library Trustees, I believe.
Diane Norris, 240 Elm Street. The library budget was cut $94,000 less than the FY02 budget, and what this will do, the $75,228, will allow us to maintain our Massachusetts certification. And the certification is important because one of the things it will do is guarantee that we are able to borrow books from other libraries and to continue the interlibrary loan policy that we have now. It will also allow us to receive state aid, which this year was $12,628. It also makes us eligible to continue to get to apply for and get library grants from the state, which we would be prohibited if we were decertified. The budget reduction was a 1/3 reduction in our salaries budget. So by the reinstatement of the $75,000, we will be able to open the library more hours than we are now, and also to make available the children's room on 2 nights a week and on Saturdays. So I would certainly encourage you to support this money. Thank you very much.
On the main motion under line 58, please state your name and address, madam.
Joy McCabe, 5 Greenbrier Drive. And I moved here 5 months ago from Woburn. I lived there for 35 years. The library was open 6 days a week. It was closed in the summer for a few hours on Wednesday. I was appalled when I came here to find out that you were going to lose your accreditation. I thought I was moving to a nice, wealthy town. But anyway, that's
welcome.
That's beside the point. You know, moving on up, I mean, I'm kidding. I loved Woburn, but they really support their library. I joined the Friends of the Library here, which I guess you call the bookworms, and I found 3 people at the meeting. I was appalled. Woburn has about 50 people show up at a meeting. Then the annual meeting, I thought, well, I'm not going to volunteer because I'm old. I've had a couple of heart attacks. I found out I was putting books away in the library because they lost 2 of their people. I mean, I can't believe it. I mean, school children. The first thing I did when I came here, I registered to vote. The second thing I did was join the library and volunteered to be active in it. And I just can't believe they wouldn't pass this, and I recommend we pass this.
Thank you. Please state your name and address, ma'am.
Ellen McHugh at 383 Park Street West. I'm the head of the Friends at the Library. We really need this to come through so our children of this town will have places to go to do their homework and get information and learn what the library is all about, and also for the elders that have used our library as a place to come out and be with people. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Gentleman at the microphone, please state your name and address, sir.
Anton McInerney, 128 Park Street.
Mr. McInerney.
To help the voters, the following is a list of the activities necessary to running the library, work that needs to be done to keep the library running. The most visible tasks are checking in and checking out materials, answering questions, shelving materials. Less visible, sorting and mailing overdue notices, checking shelves for lost items, processing materials, books, videos, DVDs, CDs, magazines, billing interlibrary loan requests average 30 a day that are sent out from North Reading, 25 that are received, evaluating and ordering materials, creating displays, preparing for programs, public relations, etc., especially for children's summer reading program that takes 5 to 6 months. Weeding materials, removing outdated and or worn books, etc. from the collection, moving older newspapers and periodicals to the second floor reading shelves, making sure shelf material is in order. Further, the library functions as a vital center of learning that is indispensable for all citizens, especially the youth. Then there are the bookworms, the historic library collection for study, the use of the internet available to all citizens, the courtesy and immediate help of the staff for any need, the friendly support for students and researchers and other library users, plus the art gallery for exhibits of local artists. Having such a clean and comfortable building to work and study in is of immeasurable value. This is not a rundown facility. Let's keep it clean and beautiful and useful for the credit it is to the community.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. The motion is for $75,228 to be raised and appropriated from the tax levy to increase line 58 of the fiscal 2003 operating budget. On the motion, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Unanimous. Line 45, Mr. Murphy.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the following person be admitted to the meeting. Greg Sponzo, 38 Westwood Circle.
Heard the motion to admit somebody who's not a registered voter to the meeting. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Unanimous. If Mr. Sponzo, please, would sit in the front 3 rows of the section to my right, your left. Mr. Murphy.
Excuse me. Mr. Moderator, line 45, DPW expenses. I move to increase line 45 of the FY 2003 operating budget, DPW expenses, by the sum of $25,000, and that said sum be appropriated and transferred from cell tower revenue.
You've heard the motion. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation? Mr. Jones, Senior.
Mr. Moderator, the Finance Committee does not recommend this line item. In so stating, let me make some general comments about this one and the 3 following ones. First off, it's a municipal principle, if you will, that you should not use unrenewable funds for operating budget purposes. Those are such things as the stabilization fund, free cash, and the cell tower. Once you use them, they're not part of the normal personal property revenue structure. Their fees, their departmental returns, etc. Having said that, why were the street lights turned off? Because we had budget problems, and we did not see fit to approve an override. There is no expectation that next year is going to be any better, and there is every expectation that it will be worse. So we turn these off for financial reasons. Could there be 10 lights in town that should not have been turned off? Probably. Are there 10 street lights in town that could be turned off and displace those that are off? Yes, that's a housekeeping problem. So we've turned them off. This asks you to vote to turn them back on. What are you going to do next April? Turn them back off, find a new source. What are you going to do? This is the general philosophy on this line item as well as the following 3 line items. Thank you.
Does the Board of Selectmen have a recommendation? Mr. Murphy.
The Board of Selectmen, after much debate, too much, unanimously recommends.
Mr. O'Leary, please state your name and address, sir.
Steve O'Leary, 15 Mead Road. When the cell tower was put in, the Board of Selectmen at the time, again, and it's changed substantially since that time, it hasn't been that long, what we were considering and looking at is, as Mr. Jones pointed out so well, this type of revenue should not be used to offset general operating expenses of the town. And what we were looking to do, and again, it hasn't been fully established at this point, because there was going to be a lot of deliberation as to what it should be going towards, but things like, we've always been trying to maintain our sidewalks, the ones that we're trying to keep the snow off of. If you could build some sort of a fund which would provide bonding, a mechanism for bonding to maintain sidewalks and expand the sidewalks throughout the town, which would again provide safe access. You could talk about earmarking these funds for other things that are coming up, like there's another article coming up later on here as far as acquisition of open space and other property that will become available through the town, and you need a funding mechanism for that. Funds such as the revenues from the cell tower was an unanticipated windfall, which is going to be a recurring event on a regular basis and should be funding quality of life issues and maintenance of long-term quality of life benefit to the community, not general operating expenses. All of these suggested uses for cell tower money are noteworthy and are worth consideration. But again, it's also a situation, as the Finance Committee pointed out, it's a Band-Aid approach here. We're going to be, putting money back into the budget for this year for the next, 8 to 10 months, and come next April for July 1st budget, most of these things are going to get cut out again anyway. It's almost like you should take the medicine now and move forward. We know we're not in a good financial situation. I don't think we should be squandering these funds, much as a Stickney Well is another situation which we've been spending wisely over the years. The cell tower revenue, again, we should be spending it wisely for quality of life issues with long-term lasting effects, not part of the general operating expense. And I understand the agony that the board and everybody's been going through as far as trying to put some of these things back in. But I just think, we would do temporary stopgap measure, Band-Aid approach is not the way we should be doing it. I think the Finance Committee, even though poor Mr. Sturtevant up there took a beating here already so far this evening, it's a good thing he switched to Mr. Jones making the recommendations here. But they have the right idea. Some of these things, while it's nice to do them, put them back in, it's just a very temporary stopgap thing, and we should be looking forward to what the fiscal situation is going to be, which isn't any better. So let's not squander the cell tower money on things that aren't going to really give us some long-term benefit, and take a more thoughtful process and look at what we should be using this revenue for.
Mr. Callaghan.
Yes, the assumption that these are the first things that are going to be cut, I think, is just that. It's an assumption. All the line items here that are being asked to be put back into the budget, first of all, they weren't cut because the 2.5 override failed. These items were cut because priorities were set, and the board at the time decided there were higher priorities. That could change. Second of all of these articles relate to public safety or quality of life in North Reading. It was prudent on the part of the boards, I believe, to incorporate a 10% cut in state aid. Now that the aid has been reinstated, we're looking to use the money for public safety items and quality of life, like the library and the recreation department. To say that these are going to be the first thing cuts is making a giant leap. Public safety should not be the first thing we consider, and to say that it will be just because it's being added in at this time, everything is on the table come April. It is every year. It's no different this April than it was last April. Decisions could be made. I am here in favor of these line items being put back in. We do have the available funds right now, and as far as the streetlights, because they get turned on tonight, don't does not necessarily mean that they're going to be the first things that are cut if we need to make